Hello everybody, hope you're all doing well. My name is Steven and this is the Storytime channel. Today we have some entitled parent stories and our first story of the day is by Johnny Tingsba. Random mother is very entitled and believes she has the authority to check my ID and stop me from leaving a store. I have just started university in Swansea, Wales, UK. I live and grew up in London, England, and we don't get many Karens in the UK. Especially in London because people just don't have the time for that crap. That being said, I would have expected for it to be more likely to have this interaction in London as opposed to Swansea. When I came here, I assumed that being a predominantly white area, I would encounter some racism being of South Asian descent with brown skin, but I was pleasantly surprised to find everyone is really nice and helpful and much more welcoming than London. There was one incident though in a Beefeater restaurant. It's like a weird restaurant with a pub/bar attached to a 3-star hotel chain in the UK, where everyone was staring at me as I moved about and I defo felt the xenophobic vibes. Anyway, I'm at the big Tesco in town, supermarket chain, the company owned Fresh and Easy in the US, and I'm buying some food and homewares like frying pans and stuff, and with that I'm buying a load of alcohol for the flat. I'm talking 2 bottles of Bailey's, large bottles of vodka and white rum, Disaronno, an 18-pack of Corona, Jägermeister, as well as Coke, Red Bull, and soda water. It's not enough to fill a bar, but still a fair bit for one person to buy. As I'm paying at the till, checkout, I have my driving license as ID ready to show the cashier. I'm 19, yet I have a pretty babyish face and I'm pretty small, so I always expect to get ID'd. But for some reason, the guy doesn't ask to see my ID and I pay and start loading my shopping back into my trolley. As I'm doing so, the woman behind me with her teenager, maybe 15 to 17 years old, starts speaking to the cashier. She was English, not Welsh, and the tone of her voice told me everything I needed to know immediately. Karen alert. She starts whining at/scolding him, asking why he didn't check my ID. The young cashier also seemed to realize this wasn't going to be a fun interaction and responds, saying that I've shopped here before and he knows that I am of age. I don't know if that was BS or not though, because I don't recall seeing him before. The woman continues to berate him, telling him it sets a bad example to her kid because it shows him that he can get away with buying drinks underage and using fake IDs. If you see a situation like that, just teach your son not to do that. Don't come at me when you know no facts. At this point, I'm done loading my shopping and decide not to engage and leave. She instantly forgets the cashier and blocks my way, asking me to show her my ID and my bank card. I politely tell her she has no right, and then she loses her crap. She doesn't scream or raise her voice significantly, but her tone becomes incredibly aggressive, and she starts pointing her finger at me and accusing me of buying alcohol whilst underage. I tell her I am of age and have every right to purchase what I just did, and if she has an issue, she can go find the manager because she, a fellow customer in the store, has no jurisdiction over me. The cashier himself decides to call for a manager and apologizes to me. I notice the kid now when he gives me a stern look, but I'm pretty sure it was just to side with his mom and that he was also uncomfortable about the whole ordeal. The manager comes over and asks the cashier what's wrong, and lo and behold, the unbearable witch interrupts the lad and starts berating the manager. The manager listens a little, stops her for a second, and turns to me to ask for ID. I give it to him, he checks it. He's happy, but as he goes to hand it back, the woman snaps at him with an expectant look on her face and says something like, "Sorry, but I'd like to check it myself." Not even a please. He gives it back to me anyway, which triggers a visible storm of anger within her, and she then proceeds to block his way and starts scolding him about poor customer service and illegal business activity, etc. The cashier tells me to leave, and I do so because it's 9 p.m. and I can't really be bothered to deal with this. I hope that woman was kicked out or something, and if so, I'm sad I didn't witness it, but dear God, I feel sorry for that poor kid. Do you guys think it's the principle of it in this situation? Would you also refuse to show Karen your ID and try and force your way out? Or would you just offer it up because you know your ID is completely fine? Let me know in the comments down below. Our next story is by artist Red Fox, entitled Mother Blows Up at Me for Enforcing Safety Rules on Her Children. Okay, some backstory is necessary here. The place I work at has a carousel, specifically one made back in the 1920s that has a lot of strict rules for riding it to ensure safety. Only 2 of those rules really matter to the story. Rule 1, one ring of the horses is off limits because they aren't 6 feet apart. And Rule 2, hold onto the horse while the carousel is moving. With that out of the way, let's begin. It was a pretty normal day at work for me, with a line of people waiting to ride, when I let this story's entitled mother and her 2 polite daughters onto the carousel. I gave my little spiel of the rules, then let them pass. Before I start the ride, I do a little walk around to make sure everyone is settled and see daughter 1 has chosen a horse that is off limits. So I walk up and politely remind her of the rule and ask if she would please move to a different horse. She apologizes and moves horse without a peep of complaint, so I start the ride. As I'm watching the ride turn, entitled mother's other daughter stops holding on to her horse. So, to be audible over the music and the sound of machinery, I cup my hands around my mouth and call, "Keep your hands on the horse, please." She holds on to her horse again, but I see entitled mother lean over and whisper to her daughter. I didn't think anything of it at the time, but I'm pretty sure now she was telling her daughter she didn't have to hold on. I say that because when the carousel came around again, the girl was not holding on anymore, so I politely but loudly reminded her a second time. Again, the girl grabs the horse and entitled mother leans over and whispers something. When the carousel comes around again, I see the girl is again not holding on, so I stop the carousel. When it's no longer moving, I walk towards them and start to say, "Hey, I just need you to hold on for safety," when entitled mother gets up in my face and starts screaming at me. "You have no right to talk to my children. You embarrassed daughter 1 by yelling at her. You do not get to talk to my kids." I immediately back up and start trying to explain. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but it's my job. But get cut off again. "No, you're not just. You're telling my kids what to do and you have no right to do that. What is your name?" At this point, I'm just crying because not only is this customer yelling at me, there's a lot of people in line watching this happen and it's sending me into an anxiety attack. Lucky for me, my manager's office is nearby, so she comes out to check on what's happening. I don't know what she said to the entitled mother because at that point I'd started having a full-blown panic attack, but the entitled mother and her kids were ushered away by my manager and one of my coworkers. I was later told they were kicked out entirely, while the other person I was working with led me to the office and sat me down in a chair so I could calm down. I'm not really sure what the entitled mother's problem was here, but very clearly, it seems to me her whole prerogative was just trying to go against the grain of any of the rules and try and piss off the workers so that they could just yell at them or something. Doesn't really make much sense to me. This next story is by It's Kisari. Entitled Mother takes my computer away because I've been spending too much time doing schoolwork. My mom hasn't been very happy with my grades. My school is normal, no quarantine or anything. I have to do all of my homework and exercises online so the teachers can see them before the next class. I'm currently studying math, physics, and chemistry. I'm not very good at them and it's a lot of work and I've been busting my butt trying to do a lot of exercises. My mom doesn't believe that all my class material is online, so she decides to take my PC and my school laptop away when I'm at home. She thinks I'm gaming all day. Now it's almost impossible for me to study. I read the documentations on my phone and do exercises on paper. The teachers don't like this. I won't tell her that I can study on my phone too because she would probably take that away as well. She has made it so much harder for me to study and she doesn't believe me. I would think the best way to handle this is probably go to the teachers, explain the situation, and have them contact your mom so that everything can be fully understood that you really need that laptop. It's kind of frustrating to me to see this mom not involved enough that she just assumes you're using it for nefarious reasons and just takes it away from you without actually looking into the truth of it all. This next story is by Just Strathmore. Karen demands I give her supplies from my work and then calls me a murderer. I'm a 24-year-old care worker who works with adults with disabilities in their own homes. I don't drive, so I need to get the bus up and down from my office to my workplace to bring up PPE. Gloves, masks, hand sanitizer, aprons, everything really. I've been doing this since before COVID-19, since it's mandatory to wear PPE. Also, I live in Scotland, so the dialogue might be a little strange. This was just after the time the Prime Minister Boris Johnson came out publicly and blamed care workers for the spread of COVID and why so many people were dying. Yes, he actually came out and said that. A few months ago, when we were coming out of the first lockdown and people were starting to get back onto public transport, I was taking the bus from my office up to the person I support's house, bringing up PPE. It was only 2 boxes of gloves this time. I didn't have a bag with me, so I just placed them on my knee as I sat on the bus. The boxes are maybe the size of a small shoebox. It was around this time that wearing face masks became compulsory on buses. An older lady got on the bus the same time as me. She ogled the boxes on my lap in a not-so-subtle manner. She had a bleach blonde bop, a bright red cheetah print handbag, and seemed much too prim and proper looking to be taking public transport in this side of the city. For the purposes of this story, I'll name her, of course, Karen. Karen nodded at the boxes and said, "Aye, they're good, aren't they? You need them on the bus. These masks don't do anything. They protect other people, not yourself." I nodded in agreement. "Yeah, that's why I always carry about a wee hand sanitizer." Karen looked very despondent as she sighed out, "Aye, I need to be careful. My grandson's got diabetes. My daughter's terrified he's gonna get it." I nodded sympathetically. "That's a wee shame. I think everyone's still pretty worried at this point. As long as we all stick to the guidelines, I'm sure it'll be alright." Karen then jerked her head down to gesture to the boxes on my lap. "Can I have one?" I was very apologetic as I said, "I'm so sorry, I actually can't. They're not mine, they're for my work. I'm a carer. This is for my work." Karen raised her eyebrows slowly. "Do you work in local care home?" She scoffed rudely, looking at me in distaste. No actually, I support people in their own homes," I explained, again apologetically. I felt really bad. I would have given her gloves because I know how important it is to keep safe during these times. She wasn't asking for much. Karen didn't look amused. "So they wouldn't even know if you gave me it?" she demanded, starting to get aggressive at this point. I felt horribly guilty. I felt so unreasonable and selfish, but I knew I really couldn't give her any. It's inventory for my work. I could lose my job. Yes, they would. They would see the boxes open. I tried to explain defensively. Karen shook her head. "Nah, you can just give me one." "One?" I asked confusedly. "Aye, 1 box." I'm sure I looked like a deer in headlights as I said back, "I'm really sorry, they are really strict in my work with this kind of thing, especially with the limited supplies during the pandemic. I really can't." I tried to explain again. Karen looked at me in disbelief and scoffed, then raised her voice. "Aye, that's freaking ridiculous. You can't even give me 1 box of them gloves. I bet you've got hunters in your work. All you carers are the same. Don't give a freak about anyone but yourselves." Her head was swiveling around towards the sparse passengers on the bus as if wanting to rally an angry mob against me. I looked away and pretended she wasn't speaking to me. She muttered angrily to herself, interspersed with swear words every now and then, and she would turn and look at me and insult me. "Stingy jerk," angry mutterings. "My grandson is high risk and you're supposed to be a carer? I care about nobody but yourself." Angry mutterings. "Doing nothing but twiddling your thumbs up your own butt. My daughter works in Tesco's. She's doing more good than your lot," she snarled. Angry mutterings. "Our Boris had it right. It's your fault that the infection rate has been so high. People like you, scum of the earth." Angry mutterings. "Claddy wee Jobsworth, having a pure power trip on some freaking gloves." I sat staring out the window, face bright red and regretting that I was ever born at that point. The bus wasn't busy, maybe 3 other people. They were all minding their own business, as was the driver. "If my grandson dies, it'll be your fault. Boris was right about you lot. Bloody murderers, murderers." Angry mutterings. She eventually calmed down after maybe 10 minutes and got then off the bus before me. I can't believe this actually happened. It was a while ago, but most of the things she said are burned in my brain. Partly because of the trauma of dealing with a real-life Karen, and partly because I've told the stories so many times to family and friends. Looking back, I think the lady might have been on drugs, but no, she was just a Karen. Terrifying they actually exist. I guess the lesson learned here is in the future, try and have some kind of carrying bag of sorts, so that any PPE supplies just isn't out in the public. Either way, very obviously it shouldn't have happened that way. And our final story of the day is by Team 7 Naruto, entitled Mother Infects Whole House with COVID-19. I'm posting this to get it off my chest and to share to the world how entitled my own mother is. Recently, my mother had friends come over for dinner multiple times. I've warned her that this is not okay, but her response has always been, "It's fine, they are really close family friends." Which is true, they looked after me when I was little. So when we found out that this friend of ours got COVID, my parents had themselves tested. At the time, my mother was asymptomatic, so the test tested negative. After a couple of days, she started getting a fever, so my father, my wife, and I told her to quarantine herself in her room, which she said she would. What we didn't know is when we are not home, she's been walking around everywhere and cleaning the house, meaning she's been in every room. Her excuse is that she's trying to help. Not only that, but she's also been cooking dinner for my dad and leaving leftovers for us, which she did not inform us of, so not knowing, we've been eating the food as well. Next, my father started getting a cough, and then my wife and I started getting a fever. Now, our whole house is sick. If this was me, it would be incredibly disappointing to see my mother act so carelessly around loved ones when they're very obviously sick during the time of a pandemic. Why even put on the faux show of quarantining if they're not actually quarantining at all? They're still around the house, they're still directly cooking food that other people are ingesting. And in the end, they got everyone sick. I think that might deserve a long, genuine conversation if she can manage to sit through that. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. So if you have a favorite story of the day, let me know which story and why in the comments down below. But besides that, if you enjoyed the video, please consider giving it a like, and if you haven't, subscribe and turn notifications on so you'll never miss an upcoming video. No matter what you do, whether it's just viewing the video, liking, subscribing, turning notifications on, I appreciate the heck out of it. Every little thing that you do helps the channel grow that much more, and I can't thank you enough for it. So until next time, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll be right here next time on the Storytime channel.